Good morning on this 10th of March, 2024. It's Latare Sunday, Rose Sunday. Liturgically, your priest at Mass will be wearing rose. No, he's not wearing pink. He is wearing rose. He will almost certainly give you a homily today explaining why he's wearing rose. Or he'll give you a themed holiday about hope and such during Lent, and it'll give you a hint as to why he's wearing the color rose. It is not pink. Good morning in the chat, Joe. You might be the only one there. It's also the spring ahead day in the United States, where 49 of the 50 states decide, hey, we're going to play God with time and push the clocks ahead an hour for some reason or another. Please drive carefully today, tomorrow, and Tuesday. They tend to be the most interesting days of the week to drive because people are running on less sleep than usual. You can imagine what that's like. All right, so we're going to get into our story today. There's a priest. If you're on Facebook, you maybe even encountered this priest. Good morning, Maria. Good morning to those in the chat. Oh, that's the wrong link. Even I'm running a little off this morning from our wonderful people in charge of everything who decided that playing with the time is a good idea. Make sure to set your clocks ahead later today if you have any clocks like the one on your stove or microwave, the ones that won't be hooked up to the internet. So we'll get to our story from LifeSite. Former Opus Dei priest faces Vatican trial over criticism of Pope Francis. Father Jesus Marie fears he will be expelled from the priesthood now that a canonical case has been opened against him. If you're on Facebook in Catholic groups following Catholic things, you've probably had some of his letters against Francis, correcting Francis's excesses and his novelties and things show up in your feed. I follow him on Facebook. I sent him a message asking for a statement or something, see if he had anything, but I didn't get a response, which is fine. I no more warrant a statement response from somebody from a priest than any other YouTuber. So whatever. But I'm not offended at it. But he seems to be a heartfelt, good priest. Up front, I will tell you that a lot for those of you who may not be aware of this, traditional Catholics often have a kind of a hard time with Opus Dei because Opus Dei is an organization that historically, in the years after the council, when there were no Latin masses, except from the SSPX and the random bishop offering one in the 70s and 80s, you had Opus Dei went from sort of its own kind of thing to being where they try to put traditionally minded Catholic men as an organization to try to scratch that itch. It was the first place you'd find your unicorn masses at. And so a lot of traditional Catholics have kind of a iffy sort of take with Opus Dei. They don't really like Opus Dei much. That having been said, I won't let anything like that stop me from telling you that this priest needs your help. So, because he's done nothing wrong except tell the truth, which seems to be a high crime in the Synodal Church of the New Advent under Papa Francis. So let's take a quick look at the article before I give you the most recent statement that he gave. It says, a priest known to LifeSite News readers for his theological objections to the novel doctrines of Pope Francis is facing a canonical trial. Father Jesus Maria Mizigbeto, apologies, Father, I have no idea how to say your name, currently lives in Benin, reported on Facebook yesterday that the Vatican and Opus Dei have begun a, quote, canonical process to expel him from the priesthood. I rely on your prayer that God will help me to live through this time of canonical trial with peace and the strength to continue defending the truth of traditional Catholic teaching against the moral and doctrinal errors that Pope Francis has inserted into it, he wrote to his supporters. This is his writing name for a priest whose actual name is Abbe Hanvir Now. Again, apologies, Father, I have no idea. Said that he had been summoned to a March 6th meeting with the regional vicar of Opus Dei, Côte d'Ivoire, but that it had been impossible for him to attend. He reportedly has had 5 extreme things said about him that if he goes anywhere, bad things will happen, and needs to arrange his security before he travels abroad. In addition, he needs to find a canon lawyer to defend him. The priest included in his message a link to his February 26, 2024 summons from Father Sissoko, regional vicar of Opus Dei in that area, as well as a letter from Father Fernando Ocades Brana, the prelate of Opus Dei. He stated that the various reasons for opening a canonical case against the priest, his unwillingness either to meet with a psychiatrist or to request a dispensation from his priestly duties, persisting in the conduct That led to his resignation from the prelature, confusing the faithful, and through his conduct perhaps promoting aversion and disobedience to the Holy See. I'm going to point you out to one thing from there. Oftentimes, when a priest comes out as too traditional, meaning identifiably Catholic, the really bad prelates will try to do that to them. They will try to go and have them see a psychiatrist, because and we've seen hints at this directed at the laity as well, but they can't do that to us. Someone said they call us names, but they treat being a traditional Catholic, holding to the same faith as our forebears, as to those who came before us back to the first century, as there being something wrong with us. That's how they treat it. And with priests, they have the ability to do this to them, so they want him to meet with a psychiatrist. In the United States, we see this most notoriously with the St. Luke's, I think is the hospital name that they send them to. A place where on paper the hospital is most known for examining priests who have admitted to Ted McCarrick kind of inclinations, if not doing those things, as a way to try to restore them to being able to be priests again. They send priests who are too rigid, too Catholic, to that place. Not for anything that they would have done that was actually evil, but it does give them that association. And thus their career is doomed. They'll probably be, cathedral office managers or some sort of something inconsequential in the life of the church for the rest of their quote-unquote career, because they chose to speak out. They are too Catholic. That is what they want to do to that priest. At least that's what they offered him. Colleen, we're not early. Sundays, I always go live at 3:30. The difference is that today, or about 3:30, the difference is that today in the United States is Spring Ahead Day. We play at the time. So what had been 3:30 for you in my time is now 4:30 for you, I think. Or 2:30. 2:30, yeah. Again, I have a hard time wrapping my head around it. A week ago, at this exact moment, it was 2:30 in the morning. So yes, it was spring forward, as my wife says in the chat. So let's go to the actual statement from the priest. He put this on his personal Facebook page. His letter is called Maria Supplicans. Nicely done, Father. Concerning the truth about Pope Francis and his moral and doctrinal errors. He wrote this on the 8th of March, 2 days ago, on the memorial of St. John of God. Now, I'm assuming that's on the new calendar. It says, Dear faithful Catholics throughout the world, the introductory part of this open letter was published in the first week of Lent. In the second week, the second part was shared and gave evidence of Pope Francis's heresies. In this third week, I will explain why Francis is a false doctor, a false pastor, and a false prophet. Let us not get discouraged as we know more about the truth about Francis, and let us not leave the Catholic Church, since it is the Church of Christ, the one with the fullness of divine revelation, unum sanctum catholicum et apostolicum ecclesiam. That's from the Nicene Constantinopolitan Creed. On the contrary, let us continue to love Francis and pray for his total conversion to the truth, because until there is official proof to the contrary, he is canonically the Pope of our Church. On this day, our prayer can be addressed to God through the intercession of St. John of God, a model of holy concern for the salvation of souls. This last aspect is very important, and the Code of Canon Law has even reminded us that the salvation of souls, which must always be the supreme law of the Church, is to be kept before one's eyes, which implies the duty to preach the truth to them. Now, with objectivity and impartiality, when in analyzing the moral and doctrinal errors of Pope Francis, every intellectually and morally honest observer necessarily sees that he's failed in this grave duty and has become a false doctor, a false pastor, and a false prophet. Francis is a false doctor. Why the expression false doctor? Because the true doctor teaches the truth, while the false doctor teaches error without ever admitting that he is in error, with lots of biblical citations. Can a true doctor be mistaken? Yes, because errare humanum est, to err is human. And when this is pointed out to him, humility prompts him to acknowledge his error and rectify it. The false doctor, on the other hand, is obstinate and refuses to acknowledge his error and rectify it. Even when he is given clear proof of his error, he always tries to present it as the truth. Can we not call this a lie, since he is consciously hiding the truth from people who have a right to know it? Today, we can see that Francis is the Pope of half-truth, since he is used to preaching the truth, but unfortunately, he sometimes inserts the false by using the relativism and situation ethics condemned by John Paul II in Veritatis Splendor. There is no longer any doubt that Francis's errors have sown moral and doctrinal confusion in the church and created a crisis of truth and faith in many Christians. In the church's 2,000-year history, has there ever been so much turmoil worldwide as a result of pontifical declarations on doctrine and morals? We'll pause there. The answer is question. There are some who say that our present situation in the church is very reminiscent of the crisis caused by the heretic Arius in like the 4th century. That's heavily debated, though, because at that time, while 80% or 90% of the hierarchy followed Arius, the popes at that time did not. And, well, the problem is every single one of the popes since 1958 has, to some degree or another, imbibed up from the well of modernism. They all have. Every single one. It's easily demonstrable. What does that mean? I don't know, but that's why I'm not particularly a fan of any of them. But for my money, we're in a worse situation than they were in the 4th century, especially when you factor in communications technology, the role of secular authorities, and all of this that was a little different at that time. You begin to see the problem here. Let's get back to his letter. Now, let us look at a very important example that clearly shows Francis to be a false doctor. Unfortunately, it is a subject that has been forgotten by the cardinals and bishops. It is the, not sure what he means by that. Several Catholic journalists and intellectuals, lists some names, in fact, lots of names, have withdrawn the document of the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith by which, on the 10th of December 2018, they authorized the physical removal from a woman that, wow, I don't even know this story. And I can't say that stuff on YouTube. So, but they authorized the physical removal of a central part of a woman that is really makes it so she can never follow God's great command to be fruitful and multiply. And that is an intrinsically evil and immoral act. This new this procedure allows a normal woman who has engages in the marital act. Wow. No, I can't actually read any of that. I'm sorry. I did skim through this. I thought I could just skip a couple words, but this is actually pretty spicy. However, such a practice is contrary to Christian tradition, as Pope St. John Paul II and Benedict XVI have reminded us. The sad thing is that the consequences of this error on a practical level and on a theoretical level are graver. For 6 years, the women in question and doctors have been encouraged to practice that practice, which is forbidden by divine law, and moreover, students have been taught to perpetuate the practice. This is the Catholic Church's first, we'll just say, evil measure, first error of the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith. I'm going to pause here. 2018, that should have been Cardinal Ladaria authorizing that in 2018. Maybe on the live chat wants to look up to make sure that wasn't Mueller, because Cardinal Mueller was CDF, but I believe he left in 2018. Somebody in live chat would like to do that would be good. Colleen says, I would explain the time difference. It has never been live for me at 12:30, but that's okay. We badly need to hold on to our traditional priest as Bernadette. Without him, mass wouldn't be mass. I don't know if he's offering traditional sacraments or not. But basically he says Francis has embraced essentially the logic of the Moloch ritual. He says, our honesty as Christians and our fidelity to God are therefore being put to the test. Without fear, we must ask Pope Francis to withdraw this document authorizing that procedure, because obedience to the Pope has a limit: sin. Indeed, God's just law on being fruitful and multiplying is above the new erroneous moral norm created by Francis, so it's Ladaria and Morandi. Remember, Cardinal Ladaria was asked to step down after he objected to the fiducia supplicans kinds of blessings. And he was replaced by Fernandez. So again, yes, Ladaria did the right thing when he objected to what would be in fiducia supplicans, but by no means is he innocent in all of this. We continue. Pope Francis is a false pastor. Why the expression false pastor? Because the true pastor cares that the universal flock of Christ, kept from the poison foods of error, is fed with heavenly doctrine. See Vatican I. On the contrary, the false pastor nourishes with errors and half-truths contrary to divine truth. Several examples clearly show that Francis has failed in the grave duty of all pastors of the church to form the conscience of Christians the moral good and truth. Clear example. By declaring with the bishops of the pastoral region of Buenos Aires that, quote, the commitment to live in continence can be proposed, or more Laetitia does not ignore the difficulties of this option. The mentioned option may not, in fact, be feasible. See, it's 5th of September 2016. What consequence can we expect if not that Christians will give little importance to the virtue of chastity? Some may be required to live chastity and others not. It's not optional. It is optional. Is this not moral relativism? It is wrong to say that such is an option, since it refers to the 6th and 9th commandments, which are valid for all human beings for all time. Admittedly, it is not an easy virtue, since there are sometimes falls that hinder its acquisition, but God demands that all human beings make the effort to live it, because this virtue manifests the truth of love lived in justice towards God and neighbor, without concubinage, adultery, or the engaging in the sins of the flesh. Jesus even reminded us that virtue implies an inestimable reward. Blessed are the clean of heart, for they will see God. There's another simple example that eloquently shows that Pope Francis is a false pastor, and then he goes to high-profile American Catholics. Francis encouraged them to receive the sacrament of the Eucharist without their need to reject their public attachment to the Moloch ritual. For those who wonder what I mean by that, it's right there. However, the Code of Canon Law expressly forbids it, based on the Christian tradition recalled by St. Thomas Aquinas. Public sinners must not be given Holy Communion even if they ask for it. In addition to the above examples, here are other poisoned foods offered by the false pastor. Elimination of good Christian proselytism, respectful of freedom, and proposing Christianity as a definitive religion willed by God for all humanity. Adoption of a certain gigantic end-of-decade program without any complaint against its promotion of the James Martin stuff, the private sin, and Ted McCarrick stuff. And then you scroll all the way down, principles of human rights-based approach to a lot of legal stuff prescribing conduct associated with sins of the flesh and all sorts of other evils of the time. And Francis has endorsed pretty much all of them. Francis is a false prophet. Why the expression false prophet? Now let's pause. He says a false prophet. He doesn't say capital T, the capital F, false, capital P, prophet. He's saying a false prophet. Why the expression false prophet? Because a lack of understanding of the dogma of papal infallibility leads many people to believe that all Francis's words and actions are directly inspired by God. These people then blindly obey everything Francis says. However, with a little discernment, we can see that Francis sometimes contradicts the word of God. The examples are numerous. In the name of God, Francis affirmed that, quote, the commitment to live in continence is an option. Yet God has never said anything similar. In the name of God, Francis said, one is not born a saint, one becomes one, and then this also applies to Our Lady. Yet blessed Pope Pius IX solemnly proclaimed in the dogma of the Immaculate Conception that the most blessed Virgin Mary, in the first instance of her conception, by singular grace and privilege granted by Almighty God, was preserved free from all stain of original sin, meaning that Our Lady was born a saint. In the name of God, Francis declared that, quote, the pluralism and the diversity of beliefs are a wise divine will. Yet this is false, since we cannot attribute to God's positive will the existence of theologies that practice evil or sin. And then he lists some of these, which are widespread in many of them. In the name of God, Francis told humanity that we have to do is a civil coexistence law for the James Martin crowd. Yet God has never issued such an invitation to mankind. In the name of God, Francis has asked priests to perform blessings for pairings in irregular situations and for those of double S type. Yet we all know that God is opposed to those sins of the flesh and can never bless such based on these grave sins. What can we say after all that has been seen? Fidelity, optimism, prayer. May our desire to be faithful to Jesus Christ, God's eternal truth, grow stronger every day. Let us always be optimistic because despite the imperfections we notice in the people who lead our church, the gates of the netherworld shall never prevail against it. Let us always pray for the church and its pastors with the Mass and the Rosary so that they may all be faithful to the mission that Jesus has entrusted to them. In the 4th week of Lent, I will show why Francis is a false pope. Let me know if you want that letter. And I'm curious what he means by false pope. Does he mean everything he does is not that of a pope? Or is he going to demonstrate, that he's a believer in one of the theses about Benedict XVI? I'm curious. Let me know if you want to see that. Because, well, this is going to be one of those stories about a priest that's going to be around for a while. But I will tell you right now, I don't believe he could get a fair shake, a fair canonical shake here. And why would he? Why would he get a fair shake? He's going to go before Vatican authorities to see if he sinned against Francis. And they were going to say yes. He will probably be removed from the priesthood, meaning he'll be reduced to the lay state, although he will still be able to give certain sacraments in an emergency. Will it be valid? Depends how you define valid. Will it be just? No. Because he is speaking the truth. Nothing he said there is false. Not a single thing. Small says, just keeps getting worse. Why am I not surprised? Take Christ from society as king, the world explodes. Yep, pretty much. Keep up the rosaries. Next up is Cardinal Burke's starting the 12th. That would be, Tuesday. Cardinal Burke's 9-month novena begins. Please consider joining it. Novena being kind of the only applicable term, because a novena is traditionally 9 days in a row of certain prayers or sets of prayers or whatever for a specific intention. Well, this is for this is a 9-month string, basically. All right, folks. So let me know what you thought of all that in the live chat. If there's anything else here, any questions in the live chat, this is your time to bring them up. I'm surprised we have as many people tuning in as we do now. I was not expecting that this morning, because the time shift in the United States tends to really kind of mess with people's schedules, and I wasn't sure how YouTube would react to that, honestly. All right, folks, it doesn't look like there is that much else. So as always, folks, pray for the church. It's Latari Sunday, Rose Sunday. You'll see a lot of color coordination, especially among the ladies at your mass today. The priest will be wearing rose, not pink. I'm sure he'll tell you why in the homily. They usually do. So as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.